The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog and join the Progressive Army.
Episode 628. Yesterday, Sunday, July 22nd, James Comey, who is the personification of everything centrists love about the resistance. I mean, if they could have James Comey become president, they would certainly elect him. But yesterday, James Comey showed us that, what we already knew. We knew that everyone resisting Trump is not truly an ally. Now, it is important that we fight and stop Trump's agenda. OK, let's put that up front. And so I have no problem allying temporarily with people like James Comey to stop Trump's agenda because his agenda is so horrible. There's no question about it. When I say horrible, that doesn't encapsulate it. It doesn't capture it. Right. But that's the limit. That's it. That's as far as we can go with people like James Comey. What am I talking about? Yesterday, he tweeted this. Democrats, please don't lose your minds and rush to the socialist left. This president and his Republican Party are counting on you to do exactly that. America's great middle wants sensible, balanced, ethical leadership. All right, James Comey, who's been a Republican all your life and just recently became a Democrat in the sense of opposing Donald Trump, resisting Donald Trump. We're going to really listen to you in terms of what the Democrats should do. Now, if centrists had any sense, which some of them do, some of them don't. But if they had any sense, they would quickly remember what James Comey did, releasing that letter back in October of 2016, which basically sandbagged the entire election. And all of this, all of his publicity tour afterwards, selling a book about it. He was honestly, if you want to blame anyone other than Hillary Clinton's campaign, James Comey is the first person you stop to. And a person who has been a Republican all of his life, who sent the FBI out to Standing Rock, who talked about the Ferguson effect, talked about the negative effect of all of the protests against police officers and making police officers afraid to do their job, the Ferguson effect. All of these things were initiated by James Comey. And now we're going to listen to him. Well, in terms of what's best for people who are not Republicans. Always catch how I phrase that, because we're not all Democrats, but we're certainly not Republicans. 97,000 likes, 27,000 retweets. That means somebody's listening to him. And you know who also is listening to him? Republicans who want to make sure that we don't shift the Overton window back to the left. That's ultimately what I'm going to talk about. Everything in this introduction is nothing that you don't already know. There's nothing in here that you don't already feel at a very personal level. You know that everyone who's fighting against Trump is not your ally. I had to unfollow some people yesterday because anyone who's co-signing this statement from James Comey is not a friend of ours. Now, again, I will ally with them temporarily to beat Trump, but that's it. Because after that, we are, and that's the difference between, if you want to continue to use the phrase neoliberal, because actually neoliberal has more of an international connotation than how we use it here in the United States. But that's fine. We'll use the word neoliberal. We'll draw the distinction with that phrase. But the limits to what we can work with neoliberals on really is stopping Trump's agenda. Now, anybody on our side of the equation who feels like, oh, Trump's agenda is not that bad that we have to fight against him, then you're not on our side at all. You might as well go ahead and finish that transition, that horseshoe on over to the alt-right. Because what Trump is doing must be stopped. And I will tolerate and put up with people like James Comey and Bakari Sellers, who's, relatively friendly with me. But, temporarily, we'll work with them. But honestly, you co-signing this type of statement from James Comey lets me know that you in the long run are no one that we should ally with, because you don't have James Comey and all these people who are grifting off of the resistance, those twin brothers. I can't even remember their names. I unfollow them. The Krasistan or whatever. People who are grifting off of this resistance movement, for money, and who are millionaires themselves. They honestly don't want the conversation to go into anything that would require more taxes from them to make sure that we take care of this country, its people, its infrastructure, its environment. They don't want to pay one more damn penny to help this country, to help the people, to help humanity. And so they put the scare tactic out here of let's start here. James Comey, who do you even consider to be the socialist left? Because if you, obviously, I know you're talking about Bernie Sanders and Ocasio-Cortez, which is the real conversation I want to have today. Ocasio-Cortez and Bernie Sanders, they are not socialist left. They are not. And I tweeted this last night. If you're on Twitter, you already know what I'm getting ready to say. I just have to say it again. There is nothing truly socialist about Bernie Sanders. You know, he's a social democrat, right? He's like me, right? I have to pause and give credit where credit is due. There is a real socialist left in the United States of America. There is a genuine communist left, Marxist, Leninist left in the United States of America. I know because I'm friends with a lot of them, and I have a lot of them who are enemies of mine now, who once were friends, but because we differ on international issues, particularly, well, I'm not even going to get back into it, but because we disagree on those issues, you know, I know that they are there, and they are much further left than they would, than James Comey. James Comey would vomit. He would literally piss his pants if he realized how strong and how fast the real communist left in the United States is growing. And as much as I get into it with them, particularly on international issues, I will not relitigate that in this. I'm going to give them their due. We need them as off as they are on some international issues. We need the real left, because if they think, they being James Comey and the centrists and the resistors who are afraid of the socialist left, if they think Bernie Sanders is socialist, they have lost their damn minds. Bernie Sanders is as milquetoast, and I'm not saying this to insult him, even if it sounds like an insult. He is as bland and as milquetoast as American history. He is as bland as mayo. His policies, his economic policies, do not threaten capitalism one iota. His economic policies merely temper the effects of capitalism. He is a social democrat. He believes the same thing that I believe. I know this because, you got to know who you are, right? I'm not a Marxist Leninist, and they know that. I know that. I'm not a communist. I am a social democrat. I think our taxes should go to change this system in a way that will benefit everybody from the top to bottom. I think internationally we need to stop. You already know who I am, right? So if you have to know who you are and who you are not. And Bernie Sanders and Ocasio-Cortez, they are not real socialists. And it's important to make that delineation here, while I also think it's simultaneously important for Ocasio-Cortez to wear the socialist badge. It's going to be one of those days. I have to parse all of these things and show you the reason why. Okay, number one. It is important for Ocasio-Cortez to wear the socialist badge, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez to wear the socialist badge, because people are still trying to use socialism as the boogeyman. And she particularly has the ability to insert the word socialist back into our, like Bernie Sanders did. He inserted it back into our national conversation and tempered the effects of the fear of the word socialist. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez does it even more so. It helps because she is young. It helps because she's conventionally good looking. It helps because, and I don't mean that as an insult. Some people may think, whatever. She looks good, and her smile is a winning smile, and it's difficult to make her seem scary. That is important. And so it is important for her to wear the socialist badge, because she's broadening in her own way the Overton window. But simultaneously, we absolutely have to let the world know that Bernie Sanders and Ocasio-Cortez, their style of socialism is the nicest thing that capitalism will ever encounter going forward. I'm not talking about the past. The next generation of socialists are actually socialist. Far more socialist than Bernie Sanders will ever be, or Ocasio-Cortez would ever want to be, right? The next generation of socialists are actually communist, Marxist, Leninist, very specific. I mean, you got to know who you are. You have to know who you're not. And so all the people trying to scare everybody and say, oh, Bernie Sanders is don't go to the socialist left. This is the most asinine thing. We're talking about nothing more dangerous than the post office, nothing more socialized than the post office. This is what Bernie Sanders is, the post office. That's how milquetoast and bland Bernie Sanders actually is. And the fact is that we've gone so far to the right where we have actual Nazis running and winning primaries in this country. But the conversation is about why we shouldn't go to the socialist left. And we've limited the window to stop at Bernie Sanders when Bernie Sanders is just the beginning of the left in this country. So it's important that Ocasio-Cortez wear that badge, but it's also important that we let people know that she's the nicest and the friendliest thing capitalism will ever get from somebody under 30. Because the actual communists are coming. And I don't say that in a bad way. As much as I disagree with Marxist-Leninists, particularly on international affairs, well, specifically on a couple of key issues that you can go back and listen to yourself. I'm not going to relitigate it. As much as I disagree with them on specific things, we need them to keep kicking this Overton window further and further to the left, because right now it's so skewed far right that we have Nazis in winning elections on the other end, and people are afraid of Bernie Sanders' post office style socialism. That's how ridiculous this thing is in this country. And anyone who's listening to James Comey, listen, centrism lost. Triangulating lost. This is not to argue that this is not to relitigate the primaries, to restart the Bernie versus Hillary wars. This is not me saying Bernie would have won, even though he would have. What I'm saying is centrism tried to beat the man in the office, Donald Trump, and it lost. And so why would you try to do the same thing twice and expect to win? Why would you listen to someone like James Comey who helped you lose in the first place? That's the part that makes so little sense. And now, I mean, it's because everyone, the bottom line for too many people is opposition to Trump. And while opposition to Trump is a critical component, because if you're on the left and you belittle or you try to minimize the effects of what Donald Trump is doing, and you try to triangulate with people on the right, and you want to come off as a sensible, and I'm punching hard left now. You try to come off as a sensible progressive, and you're not going to criticize Donald Trump, and you know, he's not all bad. Then you're just as problematic to me, because what Donald Trump is it is critical that we oppose it and that we stop it. However, our job doesn't end there. As soon as we knock Donald Trump out, we have to simultaneously be knocking these centrists out. It's got to be a both and. There is no big middle. Listen, I was getting ready to cut and put the rest of this in the patron show. But let me just say this much before I go to patrons only. America is poor. The people, so many people are living hand to mouth, paycheck to paycheck, underemployed or unemployed. And so this idea that if we just get back to normal, everything will be fine is the most fallacious idea that runs through the resistance right now. Everything was not fine. This does not justify the election of Donald Trump. Donald Trump has not done anything to make it better. In fact, Donald Trump has done very specific things to make it worse economically, let alone all of the social issues that Donald Trump is exacerbating. However, there is no going back to normal. Period. The things that were broken are still broken. And we can't go back to that. And this is what people like James Comey, they just want to get back to the way things were. Well, the way things were, and quite frankly, the way things still are, it's not tenable. It's not something that America's going to put up with. What I'm trying to say is you better run into the arms of Bernie Sanders and Ocasio-Cortez. because that's the nicest thing that's coming. That's it. Because if you don't embrace them, the communists are literally waiting at the gates to burn all of this down. And they have every reason to. Because look at the poverty around us. Look at what's happening in this country. If you ever would leave your bubble and just travel into the rural areas of this nation, poverty is ravaging this nation like we've never seen. To the point, honestly, if you even leftists who are living in their bubbles in New York, all of you who are doing all the good work of lifting the voices of socialists, and you're writing for your magazines and you're writing for the websites, and you're an avowed socialist, and you might even consider yourself a communist, you have no idea what the poverty is like in this country. Drive through the rural parts of Georgia like I did yesterday going to pick up my kids from their grandparents. The poverty is unbelievable. And you know what? Not all of them are embracing Donald Trump's nationalism as a way of assuaging their angst, their pain, their poverty. Not all of them are embracing racism and bigotry. You know what some of them are embracing? Communism. And you know what? You're damn right. Because if you think that what Bernie Sanders is trying to do in this country is scary, you have no idea what's coming around the bend. And you know what? I'm gonna back them. I'm going to support them. You know why? Because we are so twisted in this country that Bernie Sanders' post office socialism is scary now. Conservatives have done such a good job shifting the Overton window so far to the right that they have literal Nazis winning their primaries in 2018. And you have the former FBI director getting all of this publicity, all of these retweets, all of these likes, trying to scare people away from Bernie Sanders' socialism, his post office socialism. That's how twisted this country is. And I think we need to give them something to be afraid of. Let them, what's really here? People who will just as soon tear down this entire system and watch it burn because of what it's doing to the people, because of what capital. Listen, this is not any intellectual flight of fantasy. These are real people with real lives who have been eviscerated by this American economic system. Many of them have been destroyed, their families have been destroyed by America's empire. You are literally giving the people reason to rebel. You are literally giving them reasons to tear this entire thing down because it works good for you. Everything is fine for you. You think everything is hunky-dory and peachy keen, James Comey. You're the former director of the FBI. You know the difference. You know what Bernie Sanders is promoting is as milquetoast as the post office, as American as FDR. And you know that he is the least of your concerns on the left. Go look at your old files, champ. You know what's out here. But since it seems like this is the only way we're going to sufficiently push the Overton window back to the left, workers of the world unite. Go to patreon.com/the BPD show for the rest of today's show.